My ex replaced me with a richer guy after I supported her dreams, so I walked away and she begged me to return. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and for most of my relationship, I believed love meant putting someone else's dreams before my own. I met her in college. She was juggling tuition, part-time work, and 1,000 little stresses I didn't even know existed until I saw her struggling. Something in me just clicked. I wanted to help. At first, it was small stuff, buying groceries when she was short, covering a late fee here or there, but it quickly grew. Before I knew it, I was paying her rent, her utility bills, even sneaking money into her backpack on particularly rough days. She'd always smile at me, eyes bright, and say, "I don't know what I'd do without you," and I'd feel this pride swell in my chest, like I was doing something truly right. She framed it as teamwork, always insisting that what we were building together was bigger than us individually. She'd say, "We're a team, remember," and I'd nod, swallowing the exhaustion from working extra hours to make sure we were covered. I felt like I was building our future brick by brick, even if it meant late nights, skipped lunches, and a perpetually empty bank account. Friends would sometimes warn me, "Man, she's lucky to have you, but are you sure she's worth all this?" And I'd just shrug, trying to ignore that tiny, nagging voice in my head that whispered, "Maybe she doesn't see this like you do." I convinced myself that this was love, that supporting someone you care about was the right thing, no matter how unbalanced it felt. And yet, every time she smiled, every time she leaned on me, a little seed of doubt grew quietly in the corners of my mind. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it yet. I had no idea that my devotion, which I wore like a badge of honor, might one day be weaponized in a way I'd never imagined, setting the stage for a betrayal that would leave me completely blindsided. Over the next 2 years, my life became a strange balance of working overtime and watching her chase every opportunity one could support. I covered her courses, paid for networking events, bought textbooks she forgot, and even helped fund her little business ideas she insisted would change everything. It wasn't just about money. I spent hours helping her edit proposals, prep presentations, and rehearse pitches. Late nights I should have spent sleeping or catching up with friends were instead spent ensuring she had everything she needed to succeed. At the time, it felt natural. I told myself, this is what love looks like. She would constantly praise our team effort, patting my shoulder and saying, "We're going to make it, you'll see." I'd smile and nod, hiding the creeping exhaustion behind pride. But sometimes, late at night, I'd catch glimpses of frustration in her eyes, a sharpness I couldn't place. Friends began to notice, joking awkwardly, "You really do everything for her, huh?" And I'd laugh it off, dismissing it as just friendly teasing. Deep down, though, I started feeling a little hollow, like my efforts were invisible except when I was needed. The first crack started to show subtly. She'd check her phone more often, disappear for hours without explanation, and occasionally laugh at something I couldn't see. I asked once if everything was okay, and she waved it off with a casual, "I'm just networking, don't worry about it." But the unease lingered, gnawing quietly at me. For the first time, I wondered if my sacrifices were building something together, or if they were building her way out of my life. Still, I couldn't see the full picture. My love, my dedication, my sleepless nights, they all felt like they were supposed to matter. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a tiny alarm bell had started ringing. I didn't yet know it, but that little voice was the first warning that my devotion was being watched, measured, and quietly exploited. I started noticing things I hadn't before, small patterns that made my stomach twist. She'd get these sudden texts and slip away to make calls in another room. Sometimes, she'd laugh quietly at something on her phone, pretending I wasn't there, and I felt this cold pit in my chest. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid, that it was just stress or college life. But the uneasy feeling kept growing, gnawing at me during the quiet moments when we were supposed to be a team. One evening, I caught a glimpse of a message that made my heart stop. It was from a guy I barely knew, a wealthy entrepreneur she had met at a networking event I had paid for. The tone of the message wasn't casual, it was intimate, filled with plans for dinners, trips, and future ambitions that didn't include me. I asked her about it, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's nothing," she said, her eyes avoiding mine, "just some business talk. Don't overthink it." Her casual dismissal should have been enough to calm me, but it wasn't. I started noticing more things: secret meetings, sudden disappearances, a new edge in her voice when she talked about her independence. Friends made subtle jokes: "You're too good to be true, are you sure she's not taking advantage of you?" And I laughed, but inside, the seed of doubt had taken root. I kept questioning myself, wondering if I was imagining it all, or if my sacrifices had started to mean nothing. I wanted to believe in us, in the team I had worked so hard to build. Yet, every little secret she kept, every hidden smile, made me realize that maybe my devotion wasn't seen as love, it was seen as convenience. And a chilling thought crept in: what if all I had given her was the leverage she needed to leave me behind? It all started to unravel one night when I accidentally overheard her on the phone. She was laughing too easily, her voice lighter than usual, saying things that made my chest tighten. "Yeah, I can't wait for us to meet again," she said. "It's going to be so different this time." I froze in the doorway, heart pounding, unable to process what I was hearing. I didn't recognize her voice. It was warm, intimate, the way she had never spoken to me. When I confronted her later, trying to keep my composure, she shrugged. "It's just harmless," she said, smiling like she was joking. "Don't be jealous, it's nothing serious." But the unease had already settled in my chest, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to believe her, but every instinct I had built from months of subtle signs screamed that something was wrong. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. I remembered every time she had just gone out for coffee, every sudden phone call, every unexplained disappearance. I wondered if she had been doing this for months, maybe even years, while I had been working extra hours, paying her bills, and building her dreams. The pride I had felt in supporting her now twisted into a hollow ache of betrayal. I tried to shake it off, but the sense of dread clung to me like smoke. Friends had warned me before, but I had laughed it off, thinking they didn't understand our team. Now, I realized the first real cracks in our relationship weren't just small, they were deep, and I didn't know if I could patch them. My devotion, the thing I wore like armor, suddenly felt like it had made me vulnerable in ways I hadn't imagined. And then came a chilling thought that I couldn't ignore: if she could laugh and whisper like that with someone else, what else had she been hiding from me all this time? A few days later, she finally admitted it. I had cornered her, voice shaking, hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. I met someone else," she said, avoiding my eyes. My stomach dropped, like I'd just fallen off a cliff I didn't see coming. "Someone who can match me," she added, the words slicing through everything I thought we had. The guy wasn't just wealthier, he could give her the lifestyle she always wanted, without needing me to sacrifice a single thing. I felt the air leave my lungs. Years of late nights, extra shifts, and careful budgeting suddenly felt worthless. Every compliment she had given, every team effort she praised, now hit me with a bitter aftertaste. The trust one had built, the sacrifices I thought defined our relationship, had been manipulated to keep me in line until she found a better option. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel even a fraction of the devastation I was drowning in. She tried to justify herself, fumbling through excuses. "It's not like I planned it," she said, her voice trembling now. I needed someone who could help me reach my goals faster. You did everything for me, and her words trailed off, leaving me with a silence heavier than any confrontation could have. I sat there, numb, trying to process the betrayal. The rock-bottom realization hit me: I had been a stepping stone. My devotion, my love, my sweat and money, it had all been a bridge for her to someone richer, someone more convenient, someone who didn't require my sacrifice. I wanted to believe there was still a part of her that loved me, but deep down, I knew she had already decided my place in her life. And in that quiet kitchen, staring at the person I had given everything to, I realized something terrifying and liberating at the same time: my heart had been broken, but maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to finally walk away. The days after her confession felt like I was walking through fog. I went to work, talked to friends, and laughed at things I didn't feel, all while my chest ached with a dull, constant weight. Everything reminded me of her, the coffee shop where we spent weekends, the little bookstore we loved, even my own apartment, which suddenly felt empty and hollow. Friends tried to comfort me. "You'll get through this," they said, but I could barely nod. How could I explain that the person I trusted most had turned my devotion into a ladder for her own gain? I started replaying every memory, every sacrifice, every team effort she had praised, wondering if any of it had been real. I felt foolish, angry, and heartbroken all at once. Nights were the worst. I would stare at the ceiling, feeling the emptiness press against my chest. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, practical, and psychological. I had given everything, and she had discarded it without a second thought. I tried reaching out once, a weak attempt at understanding, but she dodged every question with rehearsed excuses. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she said, as if that explanation could undo years of being used. That was the moment I realized I couldn't fix her, couldn't salvage the relationship, and couldn't reclaim the love I thought we shared. I had been broken down, left feeling small and invisible, and the anger bubbled underneath the grief. Yet, somewhere in the chaos, a faint spark of clarity emerged. I could either let this ruin me or use it as a turning point. I wasn't ready to act yet, but the thought that I might finally take control of my own life, and make her absence mean something, gave me a strange, simmering sense of power. And for the first time since the confession, I started thinking, what if walking away was the only way to win back myself? After weeks of feeling like I'd been hollowed out, I finally started doing something for me. I threw myself into work with a focus I hadn't had in years, picking up extra projects, networking, and sharpening skills I'd neglected while building her dreams. I started saving aggressively, investing smartly, and setting boundaries with people who drained me emotionally. It felt strange at first, this freedom, this attention to myself, but it was addictive in the best way. I was slowly rediscovering who I was without her shadow looming over every decision. I also reconnected with friends I'd pushed aside. We went hiking, grabbed beers, and laughed over stories I'd forgotten existed. Each moment reminded me that my life had value independent of anyone else. I could feel my confidence returning, like a muscle I'd ignored for too long. At the same time, I kept my distance from her. She sent a few messages, casual questions about work, little jokes, attempts at normal conversation, but I didn't respond. I wanted to, part of me craved the familiarity, the validation I had once clung to. But every time I thought about her, I remembered the betrayal, the years of exploitation, and I realized that replying would be stepping back into a trap I had finally escaped. The more I focused on myself, the more I noticed her absence, and it felt good. I wasn't grieving in the same way anymore, I was reclaiming something much bigger than love or heartbreak. I was reclaiming control. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that the person she had tried to manipulate and discard was gone, replaced by someone who didn't need validation from anyone. But I also knew that, eventually, she would notice the change. The power had shifted, and when she did, I wasn't sure she would know how to handle it. Months later, I ran into her at a mutual friend's party. I wasn't expecting anything, I thought I had moved on, but the moment I saw her, something inside me tightened. She looked different, more polished, a little tense, like she was trying too hard to project confidence. My heart started racing, not with longing, but with this strange mix of curiosity and wariness. I could feel the energy shift as soon as she noticed me. She approached, smiling nervously, like she wasn't sure how I would react. "Hey, it's been a while," she said, voice light, trying to seem casual. I nodded politely, keeping my distance, studying her like I had studied a stranger. She tried small talk, asking about work, my life, even mutual friends, but I answered in measured sentences, careful not to give away too much. The confidence I had built over months made me feel like I was in control for the first time since the betrayal. I noticed her glances, quick and furtive, like she was trying to measure me. Her smile faltered a little when she realized I wasn't fazed, that I had moved on without her. I could sense the tension, the subtle panic that perhaps she hadn't anticipated. She was no longer the one calling the shots. I had quietly become untouchable in the ways that mattered. For the first time, I felt the satisfaction of watching someone who once held power over me realize they no longer did. And deep down, I knew that the shift was permanent. Yet, even as I maintained my composure, I could feel the faint pull of unfinished business, a conversation left unspoken, an unspoken reckoning simmering just below the surface. Something told me this encounter wasn't over, and the next move could change everything. A few days after that encounter, I started hearing things through mutual friends. She had been talking, complaining, almost, about how much she missed me, how she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. At first, I wanted to laugh. Me? The one she left for someone richer. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was serious. My absence had created a void she hadn't been able to fill, no matter how much money or attention this new guy gave her. I remembered every late night I had worked, every hour spent helping her prep, every sacrifice I'd made, and the bitter truth hit me: she now understood my value, but too late. It was a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. I had given everything for someone who saw me only as a means to an end, and now she was feeling the emptiness I had felt for months. But there was no anger left, just a clear, cold sense of what I deserved, and it wasn't her. I replayed the moments I had once cherished, her laughter, her praise, her team effort comments. They felt hollow now, like echoes in an empty room. I realized that my devotion hadn't been ignored, it had been taken, measured, and discarded at the first opportunity. And the harshest part? She now had to live with the consequences of underestimating me. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt the balance shift completely. She was the one grasping for something she could no longer control, and I was free. The thought that she might come crawling, realizing too late that she had lost me, stirred a quiet satisfaction in me. But I knew the final chapter hadn't been written yet. I could feel it, the anticipation, the simmering tension, the knowledge that when she finally reached out again, the choice would be mine. And for once, I wasn't afraid. A few weeks later, her messages started coming through, one after another. At first, I ignored them, scrolling past without opening, but curiosity, or maybe instinct, made me peek. She was apologizing, pleading, trying every angle I had once fallen for. I was stupid, one read. I didn't appreciate what we had. I miss you. Another said, I can change, I swear. Just give me another chance. Her words were desperate, almost frantic, and I could sense her panic through the screen. I remembered the countless nights I had stayed up supporting her ambitions, covering bills, editing proposals, listening when she cried over setbacks, and suddenly I felt the weight of all that betrayal again. The audacity of her asking for another chance, after everything, made my blood boil. Yet, I didn't respond. Not immediately. When she called, her voice trembled. Please, just hear me out, she begged. I know I messed up, but I can fix this. We can be us again. I sat in silence, listening, watching her desperation bleed through every word. The familiar pull tugged at me for a moment, but the clarity I had gained over the past months held me steady. I realized she wasn't asking out of love, she was asking because she felt the consequences of her actions, the gap I had left in her life, the realization that money couldn't replace what she lost. And for the first time, I held the power entirely. I could have said yes, gone back to being the person she used to rely on, but the thought of repeating the same cycle made me shiver. Walking away wasn't just about anger or pride, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my peace. And in that moment, I knew that no apology, no plea, no glittering promise could make me forget the lessons I had learned. The decision was mine, and for the first time, it felt good to know I didn't have to follow her script. I finally responded, but not with what she expected. I told her calmly, it's over. I can't do this anymore. I could hear the shock in her voice, the sudden panic, the disbelief that I wasn't going to beg or plead. Wait, what? You can't just, she stammered. I let her words hang in the air, untouched, unclaimed. For the first time in years, I wasn't bending to her will. She tried everything, tears, promises, excuses, but I stayed firm. I gave everything I had, and it wasn't enough for you, I said. I can't go back to that life. She begged, pleaded, and even threatened with guilt, but I didn't flinch. I realized that leaving wasn't just about ending a relationship, it was about reclaiming my identity, my power, and my peace. Walking away felt terrifying at first. My chest tightened, my mind raced, and part of me wanted to cave, wanted to feel that comfort I had clung to for years. But the clarity I had gained, the confidence I had built over months, made me immovable. I wasn't just rejecting her, I was rejecting the cycle of manipulation, dependence, and betrayal that had nearly broken me. As I hung up the phone, a strange calm settled over me. The panic and desperation in her voice slowly faded from my mind, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. I realized something I hadn't before: the best revenge isn't confrontation, isn't anger, it's showing up for yourself, living better, thriving without the person who tried to diminish you. For the first time, I felt completely free. And I knew she would never hold that kind of power over me again. Months later, I finally allowed myself to look back, not with anger, not with longing, but with understanding. The person who had once held my heart in her hands, who had used my devotion as a stepping stone, was now just a memory. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes she left behind, piece by piece, brick by brick. My career was thriving, my finances were stable, and the friendships I had neglected were stronger than ever. For the first time in years, I felt the kind of freedom that isn't just about being single, it's about being truly whole. I sometimes thought about her, about what could have been if she had chosen differently, but the pangs of nostalgia were brief. The clarity I had gained allowed me to see her not as the woman I loved, but as the one who had taught me my own value. I could feel the satisfaction in knowing that I had walked away when it mattered most, leaving her to face the consequences of underestimating me. She had learned too late that wealth and charm could never replace loyalty, commitment, and self-respect. And with that realization, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known existed. I was no longer tethered to the pain, the betrayal, or the cycle that had nearly defined my life. I could invest in myself, pursue my passions, and even open my heart again, this time, on my own terms. The lessons I had learned from that heartbreak became my compass, guiding me toward healthier relationships, better boundaries, and the kind of respect I had always deserved. Sitting on my balcony one evening, watching the city lights shimmer, I finally let out a long breath. I wasn't just free from her, I was free from the version of myself who had allowed her to hold power over me. And in that freedom, I found the truest victory, empowerment, clarity, and the quiet knowledge that I would never let anyone replace me again. The story ended, not with revenge, but with growth, dignity, and the kind of liberation that no one could ever take away.